going to learn about Boolean operators. Now, you may have seen some of these before when you've been learning logic gates, but we're going to look at them again in the context of Python. So Boolean just means that it has one of two possible values, either true or false. So whereas with the arithmetic operators, we could have numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, so on, as our possible values. With Boolean operators, the outcome will just be true or false. So we're going to start with the first Boolean operator, which is the AND operator. And we're just going to look at some real-life examples before we go into Python. So if I gave you this statement, the sky is blue and grass is green, you would agree with me that that's true. Because the sky is in fact blue and grass is green, so therefore that overall statement is true. If I give you this statement, the sky is red and grass is green, this would not be true, because the sky is not in fact red, so therefore that whole statement, this and implies that both those statements are true, this statement will be false. And then if I were to say the sky is red and grass is purple, neither of those is true, so therefore that statement overall is false. So with the AND operator, both conditions have to be true in order for the overall statement to be true. The next operator is an OR gate, or operator. And let's go through these statements again, but replace that AND with an OR. So if we were to say the sky is blue or grass is green, I think we would agree that's true because both those statements are true. If I were to say the sky is red or grass is green, well, the sky is not red, but that's fine because the OR implies that only one of those needs to be true, and grass is green, so therefore that statement is also true. And then finally, if I were to say the sky is red or grass is purple, neither of those is true, so this overall statement is going to be false. So with the OR operator, if at least one of the statements is true, so it could be one or more, then the overall statement is true, but if they're all false, then the overall statement will be false. And then our last Boolean operator is the NOT gate, or NOT operator. And this one's a bit different because it's only going to take in one kind of input, it only has one condition. So if I were to tell you the sky is not blue, that would be false because the sky is in fact blue. So NOT will reverse it. And if I were to say the sky is not red, well, that's true because the sky is blue, it's not red. That statement that was false with the NOT gate becomes true. So NOT will always reverse the condition. So if your condition is true, the output is false. If the condition is false, the output is true. So in Python, it works like this. So with the AND condition, if both conditions are true, it will be true. Otherwise, it will be false. So if we look here, if we say 1 is equal to 1, and that double equals is asking a question. We're saying, is 1 equal to 1? It is. So 1 equals 1 and 2 is equal to 2. So that statement is true. Whereas with this statement here, 1 is not greater than 5. And although 10 is greater than 8, as soon as we've got that one false statement, the overall statement will be false because it's connected with that AND operator. For the OR, we said we need at least one condition to be true for the overall statement to be true. You can see some examples here. So that 1 equals 1 or 2 equals 2, at least one of those is true, so therefore the statement is true. 1 is not greater than 5, but 10 is greater than 8, so because at least one of those is true, that's going to return true. And then we've got 1 is greater than 5 or 20 is greater than 100. Both of those are false, so that statement will return false. And then finally the NOT gate, and this just reverses the condition. So if it's true, it returns false, and vice versa. So 1 equals 1, that is true. So not something true will return false. We're saying 1 is not equal to 1, that's false. But 1 is not equal to 2, that's true. So that one will return true. Look at some examples of how this works in Python. Now I will say right now we're just going to look at outputting because that's all you've learned so far, but when you get to the if section you'll see how, and the loop section, you'll see how you can use these Boolean operators in if statements and in while loops. So they will come in very handy later on in your coding. But for now let's just show a simple print. So if I were to print 1 is equal to 1 and 2 is equal to 2, if we go ahead and run that, it will tell us that's true because that is in fact true. But as soon as I change 3 is equal to 2, it's going to be false because 3 is not equal to 2. If I make this an OR, it should return true because 1 is equal to 1. But then if I say 1 is equal to 0, it will return false. Now notice that AND and OR both had two conditions attached to it, whereas the NOT will only have one. So for the NOT, you're going to have to add an extra thing in brackets. So NOT 1 equals 1, that should return false because this is true, and not true is false. And I just want to show you one thing. If I were just to say 1 equals 1, that would be true. But as soon as I change one of these data types, so integer 1 is equal to string 1, it becomes false. So if the data types are different, it's going to be false. So just look out for that, because that will not, it won't work with integers and strings in case you make that mistake. So again, if I were to say and 2 equals 2, really that should be right, but it's false. And even if I change that to an or, it will still be false because neither of those statements is true. So this is just a bit about using those Boolean operators, and like I said, you'll see a lot more later on.